Bonjour à tous. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kendra
Hello,
Titley,
everyone.
and I'll be your moderator. Before we begin, please note that this press conference includes simultaneous and sign language interpretation services. It is available in full English or in full French. If you're watching live, you can find our stream in each language on YouTube. Simply search our channels at City of Ottawa or Ville d'Ottawa. A note to media outlets joining us on Zoom: if you would like audio interpretation, click the interpretation globe icon in the bottom menu, then select your preferred language. You can ask your questions in the language of your choice. Today, we will be hearing remarks from Renee Almacar, General Manager, Transit Services Department. Available to answer questions from the media, we also have Councillor Glenn Gower, Chair of the Transit Commission, Richard Holder, Director, Engineering Services, Troy Charter, Director, Transit Service Delivery and Rail Operations, Nicolas Truchon, Chief Executive Officer, Rideau Transit Group, and Enrique Martinez Asencio, General Manager, Rideau Transit Maintenance. At this time, I would like to invite Renee Almacar, General Manager, Transit Services, to say a few words.
Merci beaucoup, Kendra. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. Merci beaucoup de votre intérêt.
Thank you, Kendra. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here every day to learn more about this.
I would like to maybe start by review some of the information we shared yesterday. I know this is a very technical topic and you likely have further questions for clarification. As you know, on Monday, we implemented a new Aran Express service to provide additional travel options for customers. We have heard a lot of positive comments from users. Franchement, ces paroles positives m'ont donné énormément d'énergie pour continuer à travailler.
These positive comments have energized us to continue providing excellent service to our users.
Our Transit Operations Control Center is closely monitoring and adjusting service when needed. Just a reminder that the Aran Express service is an addition to the regular Aran service. We continue to listen to feedback from customers and will adjust service where possible. As described yesterday, RTD continues to work to meet all the requirements needed to safely resume service. First, work continues to replace the wheel hub assemblies. RTG has now changed the assemblies on 14 light rail vehicles. This work is important to increase the number of vehicles we will have available once Line 1 service resumes. In parallel, RTG and Alstom continue to work on the risk assessment and preparing to reposition the returning rail. As of today, RTG expects the risk assessment to be provided this Thursday. This risk assessment is critical to ensure that we protect our vehicles and rail infrastructure. Once the risk assessment is final, RTG will be able to begin repositioning the returning rail. This work will take at least 10 days to complete. Once all of the returning rails have been repositioned, OC Transpo will conduct trial running. This allows us to ensure that all train systems are functioning properly and we are ready to welcome back customers. Based on this information, we estimate that Line 1 service may be able to safely resume as early as August 14th. C'est vraiment de l'information très préliminaire.
This is preliminary information, but I can propose a date and say that we estimate that by August 14th, we should be able to resume service. This is really a preliminary assessment.
This is an early estimate and may change. This estimate is based on projected timelines for the needed work. As work progresses, we will provide an update on the potential timing to gradually restore service. I know this has been very frustrating for our customers. However, we continue to make progress to fix the disease, not the symptoms of the issue that affects our rail system. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Merci, Renee. I will now invite
Thank you, Renee.
media agency to ask their questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. We'll now start with Rafi Buchanan at CBC National.
Thanks for that. I guess if one of you could address how do you expect Ottawa residents to have faith in a system that keeps failing? If it's not an ice buildup in April, it's rails that are supposed to address derailment touching wheels during normal operation. What will be the next problem? How do you expect people to have faith this train won't break down again?
Thank you very much for the question. I think the fact that daily we come here and we share the info with you, we have a plan. The plan is very, very solid. And I have an engaged team with RTM, RTD Awesome, and we're working together. We want to fix the problem. So this is very important for us. And I think that will bring trust. However, I fully support what you just said. It's a reliable service that will bring back trust. And this is our commitment today.
Thanks. And just as a follow-up question, I understand that the engineering firm you have retained to look into these issues is itself something that belongs to SNC-Lavalin. Isn't that a conflict of interest? Wasn't there anyone else you could have hired to look into this issue?
Enrique, can you go first? And maybe before to move to Enrique, I want to let you know that we're working together and we have retained TRA as well to support us as a third party. Enrique, please.
Well, Rafi, thank you for your question. The criteria to choose the engineering that is supporting us in this endeavor is basically two parameters. The first one is the technical knowledge. Atkins is proficient in this specific task. And the second one was the availability. And Atkins had an engineering team available to respond in a very, very short period of time. So this is why we made that decision. And we don't believe there is a specific conflict in that regard.
Thank you. We'll now go to Avantika Anand at CBC Ottawa.
Thank you. I understand in the memo today that we received August 14th is an early estimate for return to service, but August 14th, that time of the month, is when we're expecting to see ridership levels rise because of the number of students coming into town that are going back to school. My question is, do you have a backup plan in place just in case you aren't able to meet that estimate, especially at a time when ridership levels will be higher than they've been probably all year so far?
Thank you for the question. So yes, our backup, it's the air service for sure, but we are confident that now we are working very, very hard to be able to resume the service as soon as possible. And during the time we are working on the Western Rail, RTD continues to put more LRVs available, which is a very, very good news. So we will be able to serve the service in September when students will come back and most of the workers as well.
Thank you for that. Just as a follow-up, you just mentioned that the R1 bus service is your backup plan in case that estimate isn't able to be met. But previously, you've also mentioned that the R1 buses need to be complemented by those 8 single-car trains in order to accommodate ridership levels as they are. With that not being the case, at that time, mid-August going into September, when ridership is going to be higher than it has been all year round, will those R1 buses be enough as a backup plan?
Thank you again for the question. So as I said, we'll have more of LRVs available. So this is a very, very good news. And we'll come back probably next week with what will be the plan. The plan with 8 LRVs, it was supposed to be for yesterday. And as you know, because now we have to work on the infrastructure, so we didn't launch the service. However, we continue to work to have more LRVs available. So that means we'll have more LRVs to deliver the service when we will launch it.
I'm really sorry. I just have to clarify. You're saying more LRVs will be available, but the issue as it stands is a track issue, as a result of which even the LRVs aren't being able to be run. So I'm wondering what the backup plan will entail to accommodate ridership levels mid-August.
I'm confident that we'll be back on track. However, if we had to deal with the prolongation, and for sure we will need to increase the number of availability of our buses, because we will rely on buses. However, today this is good news. Today we have more availability on our fleet, and we have a date at least now to say that, hey, we will resume the service on August 14, 2 weeks before students come back. So that gives me a lot of trust on our system.
Thank you. We'll now go to Sarah Crookle at City News Ottawa.
Hi, thank you. So in the most recent memos, you've noted that one of the actions that still needs to be required to be completed is discussing the risk assessment. I'm just wondering, I know it hasn't come yet completely, so you won't fully know, but do you anticipate what those conversations and discussions will be focusing on, and what you'll be looking at there?
Yeah, sure. And we started that risk assessment Saturday, and Richard Holder will explain you what is it exactly, but we have already started.
Yeah, thank you. So just in terms of the work that Atkins will be undertaking, we're expecting that they're going to look at options for the increase in the gap that we need to ensure that we do not have contact between the back wheel and the restraining rail. And for each of those options, there'll be a corresponding risk analysis. So they will determine what hazards are in place for each of those options, look at mitigations, look at the resultant risk profile, and then be making a determination on, what is acceptable, what is deemed unacceptable. So the city team and RTG's team will want to have a look at those independent recommendations to understand fully the consequences for the operation of the light rail system and for the maintenance of the system, so that when we talk about the discussions taking place, we need to receive the recommendations from the independent third-party organization. And then between the maintenance team at RTG, RTM, and the city operational team, we will make that decision on what we move forward with.
Okay, thank you. That kind of leads into my next question. Have you heard from Atkins yet? Have you received any feedback from them?
Enrique, please.
Yeah, we have daily meetings with them. The last one was this morning at 11:30. They are advancing according to the schedule. They request some additional data that we are sending this afternoon. And yeah, we expect no delays in the deliverable.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Ted Raymond at CTV Ottawa.
Hi there. So my question kind of is coming off of that backup plan question that was asked earlier. You had previously said that when LRT service resumes, you will continue running R1 buses parallel with the trains. Now I know that was because you were only expecting to have 8 vehicles, and so you had the R1s, but are you still planning to run those R1s parallel with the train when it comes back, be it the 14th or whenever that service does resume?
Thank you for the question. So my goal today is to have the more LRVs available as possible to be able to take the right decision. So if we think that we don't have enough capacity, we will continue to run R1 service in parallel. However, I'm confident today because RTG is doing very well with the replacement of the hub. And next week, I will have a better view and I will be able, with my team, to come to you and explain what will be the plan.
Okay. My second question is more of a math question. I'm trying to understand how this timeline lines up with your estimated date. And I understand this is preliminary. This is just a guess, but you say you need to get the risk assessment. You're expecting on Thursday. 10 days of work would ideally start on Friday. And then 10 days after that would be the 14th. That would be when service resumes. But where does the trial running fit in this? Is the trial running part of that 10 days of work, or is the trial running extra days or extra time?
Yeah, so we will work on what we call an agile mode, un mode agile en français. So we can work in parallel, and we will expect that we will be able to start the trial before everything is completed. We can do maybe partial just let's say the west of the line. Sorry for that. And so we will work in parallel, and that's why, as well as said, it's the best date for now, because that could be delayed maybe if it's required, if we think that we need to have further tests. So we will work in parallel. That's why the math doesn't fit for you, but does fit for us.
Thank you. Next, we have Mackenzie Gray at Global National.
Hi there. You had said previously the trains would be running on July 31st. Now you're saying August 14th. Why should any resident believe you'll actually meet the deadline you're proposing today?
Thank you. I think this is the transparency that you're looking for, right? You want us to come here daily and share what we have. And yesterday, one of your colleagues asked me, hey, when do you think you can you give us a date? When do you think you will be able to resume the service? And I said, I will need to see what Atkins would tell us. And this morning we had a meeting with Atkins, and we believe that it will be possible to receive that final risk assessment that we're doing in parallel. And so now the best date is August 14, but it's not a guarantee. So that's why I'm very prudent today by saying, hey, this is my best for today. And it's like, I prefer to say what I know now instead of saying I don't know.
Can I add something from a perspective of people who are using this system? Understanding the range of what we're looking at for an outage is really important. We know people are changing their plans because they don't have the train that they usually rely on. I think Renee and her team have been very clear that this is an estimate and things can change. And I think it's important that we're receiving these daily updates to get more precision, but it's also important to at least give a reasonable estimate so that residents can change their plans, adapt their work schedules. I know people organizing carpools and so on. So having both an estimate and daily updates to provide more precision, I think, is a good approach to understand when service may be back.
Mackenzie, do you have a follow-up?
I do, yes. Today is the day that the residents would have to renew their bus pass for the month. Why should they pay for a service that is not working properly?
The service here in Ottawa, it's an integrated service. So it's a bus, a power bus, and the train. So we continue to deliver the service with buses. However, I recognize that the LRV doesn't work, and that's why we're working very hard around the clock to be able to resume the service as soon as possible when it will be safe.
Thank you. We'll go to Joanne Lashes at the Ottawa Citizen.
Yes, last week we were hearing about lubricating the rails. Is that plan still underway, or is that off the table now?
Richard, maybe? Yeah, go, Richard.
When this was discussed last week, we had indicated that plan would take some time to implement. So there is a process underway where the location of the special equipment that is required to be installed adjacent to the track, the design needs to be undertaken. The amount of lubricant that is applied to the track needs to be determined. And then that equipment needs to be procured and installed and tested and commissioned. So there are several weeks of work prior to us having the top of rail lubrication working as an active system. So that will, in addition to the movement of the restraining rails, that will provide more margin in terms of reducing the forces on the axles and the hubs. But it is some time away.
So if I got that right, a few weeks, is that what you're saying, before it designed, installed, all the rest of that? And that would remain in place until the final solution has been implemented, correct?
Well, so in terms of the steps, what will be implemented first is the relocation of the restraining rails. The implementation of the top of rail lubrication, that will be many weeks. So I don't want people to think that we'll be ready in a month. It will probably be at least 2 or 3 months before that system is installed. Both those features will remain in place even after the axle is redesigned by Alstom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nous allons maintenant à Jean-Sébastien Marier à Radio-Canada.
Jean-Sébastien Marier, Radio-Canada. My first question is for Mr. Gower. You're president of the Transit Committee. The same question was put to Ms. Amilcar, who said the ball was in your court. What sort of compensation or reimbursement can passengers expect? We don't yet have an answer. It may be that some compensation could be provided, but we don't have all the figures we need to make a decision of that kind. I've spoken to the mayor and a number of colleagues. This is something we have been discussing, but we need the figures for all costs associated with that particular response to the problem we've had over the past 2 weeks. Thank you. My second question is for Ms. Amilcar. We've spoken to users with impaired mobility. They were in wheelchairs. The light rail was sold as an accessible model. On the R1 bus, there are only 2 spaces in front for wheelchairs. Transpo needs a lot of notice. So what's your response to people with reduced mobility who need that train? In Ottawa, we are fortunate because the whole transit system is accessible, but I do understand that it may be difficult for some people to get on a bus if there are only 2 spaces. We are open to seeing what we can do with Transpo. I can look at this with my teams. I can't make a commitment as we speak, but if there are people we can help out, we will be happy to help. We are continuing to make sure that we get the train back into service so that everybody has the flexibility that it provides. Thank you. Would you mind repeating that answer in English?
Sure. So I will see with my team what we can do to help people with chairs or comment on dit mobilité réduite? I don't remember.
Accessibility issues?
Yeah, thank you very much. So to see what we can do with Transpo, but again, the goal is to definitively resume the service as soon as possible.
Merci.
Merci.
We have time for a few additional questions.
Thank you.
To use the raise hand function. I'll give it a few seconds and then we will go to the raised hands. Ted Raymond at CTV.
Hi again. I understand that your goal is to resume service as soon as possible, but we're looking at another 2 weeks of this. And, we're asking, what are you going to do now for people who have mobility issues, for people whose commutes have lengthened because of this shutdown? We're asking, what are you going to do to help people right now while they're still waiting for the LRT to come back? They've been waiting since the middle of last month. They're going to be waiting until the middle of this month at least. I understand that you've got the R1s going, but that's also affecting transit users elsewhere in the city. We know that they're taking buses away from other routes to supplement the R1. So I guess the question is more about, I understand your goal is to get this service back, and you're working to do that, and that's great. But at the moment, what else can be done to supplement and help bus users whose trips are being disrupted because of the R1 service, and who have mobility issues and can't access paratransport or can't access enough space on the limited number of buses that are around? What can you do for them?
Thank you for the question. So for those who have mobility issues, and if they have access to paratransport, I will invite them to call us, and we'll see what we can do. Even if normally they can book on a daily basis, but we can see what we can do. And I will meet with my team to see what else I can bring, and tomorrow I can share that with you for sure.
Thank you. We'll go to Avantika Anand at CBC Ottawa.
Actually, I think my question was just asked. All good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Et Jean-Sébastien Marier.
Oui, merci. J'aimerais clarifier, vous parlez et vous en parliez
Thank
vendredi.
you. You were saying on Friday how important it was to move the restraining rails at certain spots. Where exactly is that? Does that include the curb between Lise and Urban? Yes, of course. I can also provide the whole list. There are 16 curves distributed across the network. We can provide you with that. Thank you. What about the one between Herdman and Lise Lacrosse? That is on there. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Can that list be sent to all of us, please?
Absolutely.
Will do.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, this will conclude today's media availability. Thank you very much, everyone. Merci.
Thank you.